The number one complaint people have about AEW is that there are no stories. Well, I'm going to have to call bullshit on that one. Let's take a look at an episode of Dynamite and how AEW tell stories. We're going to use the Wednesday, June 19th, 2024 episode of Dynamite. Segment 1 is a match between MJF and Roosh. This is the payoff to a story that was set up last week when Roosh interrupted MJF's return to AEW television. The end of this segment sees the lackeys of the evil EVPs, the Young Bucks, who MJF mouthed off about last week, set up a challenge with the Mexican luchador monster Hechicero for Forbidden Door, the pay-per-view coming up later this month. The match itself they're setting up doesn't have a lot of story, but there is a story-based reason behind it. Up next is a clip package about the six-man ladder match for the TNT title, followed by a bitchin' promo from Mark Briscoe to set up an 8-man tag match between the participants of that ladder match. In the middle of it, Jack Perry, another participant in that ladder match who isn't in the tag team match, crosses through the scene and interacts with the other wrestlers. There's also character moments there for Orange Cassidy, Dante Martin, and Kyle O'Reilly. And even backstage interviewer Renee Paquette gets a moment. Next up, a promo off between Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay, setting up their match at Forbidden Door, and, more importantly, establishing a personal beef between the two men. They also remind the audience about Ospreay's connection to the evil Don Callis family, which is a story that was kind of forgotten about a few months back. It also starts to lean Swerve heel by reminding the audience of the storyline from last year when Swerve broke into Hangman Adam Page's house and threatened his family. The whole segment ends with a tease of the fracture forming between Don Callis and Will Ospreay because of what Will just said. Up next, that 8-man tag match, which frankly doesn't have a lot of story content, right? It's really just there to be a banger. But even then, it is setting up the ladder match for the TNT title, and then this other match between Zack Sabre Jr. and Orange Cassidy. After a lot of just great wrestling, the match wraps up, and we get all of the story that we need for those matches that are spilling out of this segment. That's just the first hour. I'm going to stop there because that is a lot. I mean, we didn't even get to the most elaborate story on the show, which would be the love triangle between Toni Storm, Mariah May, and Mina Shirakawa, which is far and away my favorite story on wrestling TV right now. It's also probably the most WWE story on AEW. For the most part, these are not complicated stories which sprawl and span months on end, but they are still stories. They're what a lot of the middle tier stories on WWE are about, very much driven by title belts and simple grudges. But they also have stories that are driven by love, and even some with incredibly elaborate backstories. Is it really that different from what you're seeing on the WWE right now? I've worked on a huge range of shows. When I was writing for, say, the internet series Lonely Girl 15, I wrote in a completely different style than I did when I worked on Chicago Med for NBC. But they were both telling stories. They had characters who wanted something, had obstacles in their way, and would do anything to get past those challenges and accomplish their goals. Because that is what a story is. Whether it's Shakespearean in scope, or simply about two guys punching each other in the face on pay-per-view later this month. What's your favorite story on AEW? What's a story you wish they'd go back to and finish? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to like, follow, and share. We'll see you next time on Wrestling with Story.